Welcome to the Microaces Scrappee Float Upgrade Kit build video. In this video we'll show you how to build the Microaces floats specifically designed for the Scrappee aircraft. For this build you're going to need several tools. Firstly, you need a good sharp scalpel or knife, hobby knife, some foam to foam glue or something similar, and you're also going to need a pair of snips too, and we'll come to where they become useful in the latter stages of the video. And the other thing that may be required is a little bit of wax. I've got a tea light candle here, and it's just for waterproofing, a bit of bell and braces, but there we go. I'll just pop that over there for now. So in your kit that you should have received, you will get two 2mm sheets of the frame of the floats. You should also get 2 sheets of laser cut Tyvek. Obviously they are opposing sheets as well, and they should tell you that you've got either a port or a starboard sheet in front of you. You should also get some nice little 3D printed mounts so that you can actually attach the floats to your Scrappee, and also a carbon fiber rod. You can actually use your existing axle, but there's a spare one there should you need it, or if you prefer to have a carbon fiber rod for both the floats and the wheels. Right, on to the build. Oh, the other thing you should get before we do go on to the build is the manual. And apologies, all of the wording is back to front as you see it. That's just the way the camera's set up. So that guide should also help you through the build. The floats that you see here are actually the upgrade pack. Of course, we do another set of floats that have got a design on them for the Scrappee Marlin. So if you're building the Scrappee Marlin, you can follow this particular video to build the floats too. It's just that obviously these have got a different decoration on them. Okay, on to the build. Let's clear some of this away that we don't need at the moment. So there goes the carbon fiber, the 3D printed parts of the Tyvek, and we are left with our framework. Now I'm going to actually show you one float being built, and I'll just release all of the parts that we need for that one float. In preparation, we need to sandwich a few of these parts together. So I'm cutting out V2, V3. So I'm going to cut out the parts that we need to sandwich together first. So we've got V2, V3, V4, and whilst we're here, I'll cut out V1. Hopefully most of these parts are in sequence. So firstly, we're just going to sandwich V1, V2 through to 4 together. Just a light application of the glue. V3, and I'm just making sure that it's level at the top. Now the glue's quite wet at the moment, so it'll slip and slide around. It'll give us an opportunity to get everything straight before we set it aside to dry. go. So I'm just making sure that the whole thing is square. Obviously we've got a slot through the center of the part as well. If that all lines up, that's all good. We can pop that to one side, and then we can continue to cut out the parts that we require. So V5, V6, V7. We won't do them all at once, although the part numbers are actually scored onto the parts themselves in the cutting process, so we can keep a close eye on the identification. So let's continue our cutting. So there we go, we've got to V5, 6, 7 and 8. And then we're going to take a bit of a leap to the 11 and V12. And then V13 and V14. So that's V14, V13, and V11, V12. Now V11 and V12 actually come together too. So one piggybacks onto the other. You keep the top edge of both of them flush, and the rest should follow. So there's a slot here, but it's stepped, so that the bottom of the slots don't line up, and also there is a bit of a step here too, halfway down the part. So what we'll do is apply the glue to the smaller part so we don't overstep the mark. Just pop that up to there, straighten it all up, and then we can set that aside to dry off. So in the meantime, I can start building the framework of the float. I'm just going to add a little bit of glue where our frame goes together. So we start off with our smallest number, V5. That should slot in like so. And V6. Don't need to use too much glue. You see, we want to keep the weight as low as possible because these are going to be in the air. Now comes the this is where you decide whether you're building a left or a right float. But you'll notice on both V7 and V8 there's this stepped part which makes the whole part asymmetric. So if I put it on this way, then this becomes a port side float, and if I put it on this way, it's a starboard side float. So the attachment point for the floats onto the aircraft is set off center to the float itself, and there are a number of reasons for that. But when you make your first float, make sure the second float is the opposite to the one that you've just made. Otherwise, you will have built yourself two left or two right hand floats, which is no good to anyone. Although you should be able to pull it apart pretty quickly and reverse these, so shouldn't be too much of a bother if you do get it wrong. But if you don't in the first place, it just makes your life easier. So V6, V7. V8. And obviously make sure that when you do attach these two parts, V7 and V8, they both sit in exactly the same way on the float. Otherwise it will get confusing. Go. So now we've got our stepped part. As you can see here, the slot is stepped as well. Let's see if our part has dried sufficiently. And yep, that seems to be fine. So we can pop that in place as well. A little bit extra glue here because there's a little bit of an issue for waterproofing. So goes with the larger part facing forward, and that should just slot into place there and sit on that back step there, like so. So onto V13. Slot straight in there, and then V14 sits on the tail here. Like so. Okay. Now we can put our nose piece on. It consisted of 2, 3 and 4, and that sits just there. I've just dry fitted it just to make sure that it all sits where it should do. That's fine. We can glue this on as well. There we go. Right, we can set that aside to dry for now. You can eyeball it just to make sure that everything is lining up according to plan. Yep, there we go. So we'll just pop that to one side, let that dry and move on. So let's cut out V10, and there's some work we need to do on this before it's installed. So we'll just pop that to one side, and if we grab, well, what do we got here? We have got a starboard port, so let's get our starboard Tyvek. And although you could use either or, we're going to use our T1 here. So let's break out T1, cut it off the sheet, and then we need to do some scoring. Oh, the other tool we need, which I didn't mention before, is some sort of straight edge. So I've got a lovely little 6-inch steel rule here, and all I'm going to do is score the unprinted side. So we've got a printed side here with a little bit of bluey grey down the centre. I'm just going to turn the part over and then just score where those little V-shaped cuts come to hit the main body of the part. So right down there. I'm just using the back edge of the knife. I'm not actually using the knife itself. Just using the back edge of the knife to create a score. So same again, where those little V cuts meet Make sure I get it straight. There we go. And so we should be able to fold these little tabs in like so. Now this should now fit onto the top edge of our V10 part. And there is a way round that it goes. You'll notice that there are some longer tabs on either end of this part of a T1, but one is slightly longer than the other. And you'll notice on your V10 part that one of the flat edges on either side is longer than the other. So that's the way round that the part goes. So it sits onto, well, the Tyvek sits onto the V10 part like so. The easiest way to do this, I find, is to actually apply some glue. So I'm going to put it on the top edge, down that little valley, and then along the other side, and then I'm actually going to apply a little glue around the sides as well, where the tabs are going to fold down. Now it might get a little bit messy with the glue squidging out between those tabs, but we can clean up after ourselves. So make sure we get this around the right way. Long tab, short tab, and then I'm just going to press it down so that the edges come into contact along that top edge, like so, and then I'm just going to temporarily fold those tabs down just to get some glue onto the underside of the Tyvek. Then I've got a little bit of glue on my hands, which I can just wipe off. It should ball up and come off if I rub it against the cutting mat. And then I'm just going to let those tabs float around in the air like so at the moment, until that glue dries sufficiently that when I push them back down again, it should be acting like a contact adhesive, and everything should hold. So while that is drying off, I'll pop that aside there, and I'll cut out the rest of the parts that we need. So those are our V9s. There we go. Now, while we're looking at these parts, they all line up. They look fairly similar, but they do, if you mismatch, so if you get them around the wrong way, like so, the hole doesn't line up in the middle. If you do get them in the right way around, and then the hole lines up like so. So we're going to use these to sandwich our center piece. Let's see if that glue is sufficiently dry now. Yep, that seems to be holding down. Go. And now we can use this, use the two parts we've just cut out to sandwich our clad foam part like so. So what we'll do, just apply a little glue. And where I am going to concentrate the glue is around the top there, because once again, if this float gets submerged, the water could come in from the top there. So make sure we've got sufficient glue to produce a good seal. So let's bring those together. You can see once again the lining up hole rule applies, apart from that little part there. So that should all line up. Make sure it's flush at the top and that our little slots line up too. We can turn over and do the same on the other side. The wrong way around. We can flip it over. A little bit of glue on the outside there. We'll just put that bead off. Oh, it's very mucky now. We'll wait till that part dries and then we'll get the rest of that that glue off. Not that it'll matter; it'll all be encased within the build anyway, in a very short space of time. So good. Okay. Well, we'll set that aside, and if you want to, you can actually weight it. So you can pop something on top of there, and then pop the cup of tea on there and let that dry. Whilst that's actually drying off, let's take the last parts of our 2mm foam off the frame. So that's our V15s and V16 parts. Go. Let's see how that is done. Good. Well, most of it's off. So we can now do a quick dry fit and make sure that this actually slots in where it's required. There we go. Now, I've actually got that around the wrong way. Once again, so let's just, so how I know that is that my hole isn't lining up. So let's pull that apart. Easier said than done. Go. And let's try it the other way round. There we go. Also, the slope, the upward slope of the float keel here should be reflected in the part that we've just pushed on too. So we go right. Let's take it off again, and we can then glue it on. Oh, we've got a bit of delamination going on, so let's just fix that. Obviously, haven't left enough time for the glue to set. There we go. It's all very forgiving and flexible. So, okay. So we'll pop a little bit of glue just on the surfaces that'll come into contact. Go. And then pop it back into place. We're going to obviously make sure it's flush with the top of the keel and fully in place. There we go. Right. The next stage, V15s. These are parts that stabilize the edges of the floats, like so. Literally can be applied very quickly and easily. Just a little bit of glue on these steps. Go. They just slot easily into place on the keel, on the formers, I should say. Like so. And it doesn't matter if you don't get it perfect, we can leave that now and just come and push it firm once the glue has dried somewhat. So repeat the process on the other side. Should all fit nice and easily. There we go. Okay, so V15's in place. Now to pop our V16s into place. And they literally sit on the sides of the float, either side of where the attachment point is, just as a bit of reinforcement. Once again, we can just tack them on by applying a little bit of glue to the structure that they come into contact with. Just test fit each of them just to make sure that everything's sitting flush, and then we can apply our glue. On this side, I can also, where it comes into contact with our connector part, add a little bit of glue there just to make sure it's retained. There we go. Okay, well, we'll set that aside. Once the glue has dried off a little, we can just make sure that all of the parts have settled down where they're supposed to. And one last part we need to put on. So get our starboard Tyvek again, and T2 is what we need. Now T2 has already got a couple of scores on it, but it needs further scores on the back of the part. So you can see the scores that run along these two tabs here, but we also got another 4 tabs that we need to have flexing at a particular point. So we just run across the base of each of those tabs. With the back of the knife. It's a nice, quick, simple process. But you don't want to cut through the Tyvek in any way. And then we can form this up. So those pre-scored fold back like so, as do the ones at the side, and the ones at the top of the part, the narrower part of the piece, fold forward, and this all sits on the step of the float, just there. It should be fairly obvious how that all sits. So just before we put that on, we'll just make sure that all of the framework is sitting pretty. And then we can apply some glue around the step area and attach our little piece of Tyvek. Let's put a little bit extra on the underside of the step former. And then pop our part in place there. Now I'm just going to push down the tabs, push everything into place, and then let the part relax, let the glue dry a little bit, and then we'll push it all back and it should grab and stay. Great. Okay, that's that part done. Now you can go on and do your second fuselage frame for your float, so that you've got two sitting like that, and you can make sure that you have each one with its attachment point offset to the inside of the float, rather than having it on the same side for both of the floats. I'm going to carry on and start forming up our covering, which is made of this Tyvek material. If you haven't used Tyvek before, well, you've used it a little bit now on the assembly of the framework, but this is altogether a bit more of an experience for you. So let's take our T3 part and free that up. There we go. And also we need our T4 and T5 parts. And then we're going to have a bit of a scoring fest. So T4, T5, oh, and we also need T6. There we go. In fact, we're going to attach, before we start scoring, we're going to attach T6 to T3. And you'll notice on the parts, you might not be able to see in the video, but when you've got the parts in front of you, there are notches in strategic areas. And on this particular part, on T6, we need to marry up the notches on there to the notches on our T3 part, and we're going to overlap the T6 part on the underside of the T3 and the back edge of it like that, so you've got half on, half off. So let's just apply a little bit of the foam to foam glue, and I would highly recommend this foam to foam glue. We've tried using others like Pour, and it causes a little bit of a reaction from the Tyvek. It doesn't melt or anything like that. It just tends to distort a bit due to the petroleum content of the Pour seeping into the plastic material of Tyvek. So right, so we need this half on, half off. and our little tabs to line up as well. There we go. Off. Just press it home. Make sure we get a good stick. Right, we'll pop that up there to dry off, and then we are going to start scoring. And we're going to go to the underside of our T4, T5 parts. And firstly, we've got a little notch here, and we're going to take the score from that notch to the bottom of the first V cut. So hold the straight edge firm, and then back edge of the knife all the way along. There we go, to the notch. Right, just before I do that, let's just take down the email, which is making a noise in the background, and then we are going to score between each of the V cuts. You'll notice that the Tyvek has got a bit unlike paper, which it is like, but unlike paper, it's a little more slippery, kind of soapy. So when you are putting a straight edge against it, you have to push down a little bit just to make sure that nothing slides. So there's scoring done for that part. And we'll do the same on the other side as well. But you don't have to watch that. I can pause and come back once I've done it. So I drunk my tea whilst I was doing that. So we've got our scored T4 and T5 parts. I am just going to bend those scores like so. And on the other side too. And then I'm going to apply each of these to the side of the main skin for the float. So I just run a bead of glue along here. Now this is the joint that is going to come in contact with water if you're using the floats for the Scrappee in the wet stuff. So getting a good Alexa's going off in the background there. So you can get a good seal. So I had to be rude to Alexa then. I obviously said something that set her off. So I haven't unplugged it yet, but there's always that option. Anyway, so we've got a good amount of glue on our part here, and we are just going to apply it to the frame. Sorry, not the frame, the main skin of the float. Go. And I'm actually going to use the back edge of the knife and just run that around to apply some pressure. and get that well seated. Okay. Okay, let's just repeat on the other side. A good bead of continuous glue. Go. Just. Go. And just apply pressure using, well, you can use anything you want, fingertips, other tools, paintbrush handles. Just make sure you get a good seal, and that should help with waterproofing the floats and stopping ingress of the wet stuff, which will obviously make your floats a lot heavier and will make taking off and flying a lot more difficult. Right, now we've got some scoring to do on our main part. We need to go down from the cut-in here where this nose piece is, right down to the notches at the back there. So right, that's one. Notches to cut in. So we should now be able to form that crease like so. There we go. At the front here, where the nose piece projects, just at the base of that, we need to add a score there as well, so it can bend over like so. So we get our scores well folded. So that should fit over our float like so. Before we do that, let's just make sure our Tyvek piece on the step of the float is nicely popped into place. There we go. So our next process is to get this fitted onto the float securely and tightly. Everything should fold over in the right place. Yep, looks like we've got a good fit there. So we'll start off by gluing the top of the float. Make sure that's all bonded together. So we're just going to add a little bit of glue. You hear some weird chirping in the background. That's Percy, fast asleep, probably chasing some birds or rabbits or squirrels in his dreams. which is quite delightful. Okay, so certainly around this point here, it's important that we get a decent seal too, to stop water coming in. Just across the top of that structure there. There we go. So let's bring our part to bear. Pop it on top. And then sure that it's positioned correctly. So correct position is obviously the slot sits over the divot that we've created, and that the front nose flap is in line with the front of the float as well. Those three sandwiched pieces that we initially installed there. So okay, and what we're going to do is just let the glue set, and then we can push it all into place as necessary once it becomes a contact adhesive. Whilst that's happening, we can turn our attentions to the rear portion of the float skin. That is T7 and T8. Now let's get T7 clear. Once again, some scoring required for this, and we've got plenty of notches as well across the top here. We've got 4 notches which represent 4 scores, and they go to the larger notches at the base of the skin too. So we'll do those first. Yeah, I've just noticed there's a little bit of a tab left where we cut the part out, so I'm just going to trim that. I noticed one just here as well, so just going to trim that off too. So we've got our 4 scores down the main body of the tail. We've also got these little tabs at the back too, so we're just going to score those so we can fold those over. And also the end of the part as well. So there are 5 scores that we're doing here in total to articulate these tabs. Now, before we fold anything over, we're going to grab our T8 from the sheet, turn that over, and just score right down the middle from point to point. And whilst I've got it trapped, I'm actually going to use that to fold it along the score line too. There we go. So this is actually going to attach to the edge, and you can do it to either edge of the tail, and obviously with the score line going along whatever edge you tack it to. So once again, this is going to be in water if you are popping your Scrappee into the drink. So a continuous bead and relatively generous is called for here. Go. Just put that into place. Like so. Just make sure you've got it on along the score line. Taking off a little bit of excess there, and then we can press it home. So the other technique we could use is using our trusty steel rule, just popping that there, and then pressing down using that edge. That's quite effective. It's probably squidged out some glue too, so let's just remove that from the equation. Okay, well, we'll set that aside for now and let that glue dry, and hopefully now we've got some grip to the glue on our main skin. So now we can bring those sides down and get them glued. I'm going to raise the nose tab up first because I'm going to tuck our little tabs under and fold that over. But what I need to do is get access to the side of the float here, and I'm just going to add glue along our rail here, side rail. Once again, continuous bead, relatively generous, and then up the side on the former as well. I'm just going to add a little bit extra on the side there just to make sure it sticks. And the other place I'm going to put it is actually just down the bottom edge too, because when the tabs fold over, it'll give them something to adhere to. Go. So just going to press that side onto the glue like so, and just fold those tabs so that they also get some of that glue onto their surface, and then I can just let that relax. And I'll turn around and do exactly the same on the other side. On that bottom edge again. Right, let's pop those sides down. Sure we get glue coverage, and then let it relax. And once again, we can pop that to one side and turn our attentions back to the tail. So what we want to do now is just make sure that our scores are creased well. You'll find the Tyvek, if you've scored well, creases very, very cleanly. And you can always practice on the spare on the sheet that you're given. Let's fold these tabs in as well. Go. That's going to fold down. But what we need to do now is bring everything together to form up so that the part becomes whole, creates a nice structure. And to make sure that this tab here sits firmly against the corresponding part, you just fold it out slightly so that the crease isn't too big. Alternatively, thinking about it, we could crease it a lot and then just fold that onto it, and we can obviously rejig everything once it's glued. So anyway, let's do a halfway house. And now we just need to apply the glue to the tab. All the way along, continuous bead. And bring the two surfaces together. Now we're going to let them fall apart again, and then use this quality of the foam to foam that allows us to use it as a contact adhesive once it's dried. Okay. So if we can set that to one side now, we'll turn our attention back to folding these sides down. So that was our first side, I believe. So if I just fold that, and then I like to use something harder than a finger to make sure the glue takes. Any excess glue tend to be able to rub it off the Tyvek just by friction alone. I know on the foam that you can use lighter fluid to take off this, but I wouldn't recommend it on Tyvek because it may well cause the Tyvek to distort slightly. So it's best just to use a friction method that allows it to just bead off the glue. Go. And then let's move to the other side. Just fold that down like so. Give it the old Back of the knife treatment. Rid of that excess. Bead up. Excellent. Right, so the only other bit that we've got to do here is to just fold that nose piece over and stick it down to the structure like so. So let's just open those tabs out so we can get some glue underneath them. So to the underside of that front flap. Fold in and over, let the glue do the work. So we'll let that unfold again, and then once the glue has become tacky, we can pop it all back into position and it should stay. Good. Right, back to our rear part of the float. So because this is now a contact adhesive, we don't get a lot of chance to slip slide stuff around, so we need to make sure that when we bring it together it's as accurate as we can get it. So we said leaving a great big gap at the back there. So better. Okay, and then I'm just literally going to fold that bottom part so that I can squash everything together. And that seems to have taken well. We've got a bit of beading to do on the excess glue. Actually, you know, bring the what I can do, I've got a pencil here, so I can just pop that underneath there, and then the back of that, just to solid things up and bead off some of that glue that's eased out. That should also create a really good seal. Go. Okay, so we've just got to cap the end there, like so. So it's just a matter of popping some glue on those little tabs at the back. Okay, and then just fold that over to apply some glue to the underside, and then we'll just let it flap up again and bring it all together once that glue has set. Okay, back to the nose, fold over, so that should all be tacked down nicely, and I can use the back of the knife to form my shapes. Press everything firmly down. There we go. Good, so Our final piece of Tyvek is the portion that sits right on the bottom of the float, and that's T9. Now, if you've studied the shape of the floats themselves, you'll notice that it starts off flat at the front here, and then there is a slight angle in the hull itself. So there is a fold that goes down the middle of here halfway. So we need to replicate that on T9. And we do that once it's free by scoring, but only halfway down. So we've got a notch there. So we're literally going to there we go. Just get rid of that tag. So this should now sit nicely on the rest of the frame. And go from that step all the way up to the nose, and obviously we need to tack it down well to make sure that we don't get any leakages. But before we do that, let's just finish off the rear section, pushing that down onto the tabs. Okay. And then this section literally slides on, and just one point of contact so it should be a relatively tight fit, and go over like so, and then sit firmly in place like that. So the point of contact is around this area here. So that's where we need to apply the glue, and we'll get that popped on now. We don't need to glue it to any other part of the frame really. We just need to be relatively generous to ensure waterproofing. We'll just put a little bit on the back there. There we go. Okay. Trying to bring that to there. A bit of squidging of glue. We'll leave that to dry off, and then we should allow that to dry off, and then we can start thinking about putting the last piece onto this float. I shall come back when that has set. So, now dry, fixed in position, ready to put our last piece of the puzzle onto the float structure. just the 3D part to go after this. So, what's going to be the best way to do this? Well, I think a gradual process of attachment is the best way, starting at the back edge here. So what we're going to do is just add some glue, making sure we have that continuous bead, and wherever there are areas that could cause potential leaking, ingress, liquid ingress, then we need to add just a little bit extra, I think. So we're going to take it to just before the curve up to the nose. I'm going to put a little along the keel too, and some out on the formers. Go. And then just pop this on. Like so. Now I'm going to leave it on there. I'm going to let this glue sit between the two parts and hopefully seal everything up. And then because it's nice and flexible, we're going to bend it back and apply more glue and finish off the process. So we'll just let that dry for a few seconds and push it down a little firmer once that glue has set to some extent, and then we'll carry on with that attachment process. Whilst that is drying, what we can do is get our little 3D printed parts, and because they're on a raft at the moment, that's how they're printed, and we need to detach the parts themselves from the raft. And there are obviously all these little attachment points here, and that's what our little snips can be used for. Just removing a few of these. Now once we've got a few released, it becomes easier and easier to remove the part. And do watch out, there are a couple of, well, there are 4 little pins on the underside. They're quite substantial and they're not very long, that locate into the holes that you can see on the Tyvek themselves. So you don't want to cut those off. So be aware that they are there. If they do come adrift, it's not a big problem. You just have to be careful when you locate the part. So we've got a few snipped away now. Let's see if we can just wiggle this part off. So you can hear it all cracking as I wiggle. And there we've got most of it off. Now you'll see it's quite dimpled on the underside here. That's not an issue, but for attachment purposes, what we can do, if you want, is just give it a sand down between the, you can see these 4 little pegs here. Just give it a little bit of a sand between those pegs, and then we just obviously increase the surface area that comes into contact with the float itself. Now here's the question: have I removed the correct? Well, look, I have. That was lucky. I didn't think about that, but I have removed the right one for the float that we've just made. we go. So just sand it down. The other thing we need to check is that our carbon fibre fits through there nicely without any issues. That's fine. Good. So get rid of that now, can't we? In the bin. Just put that to one side. Keep that in view. Let's clear off some of this swarf. And let's return our attentions to the underside of this float. So just push the edges down. Either use your finger or, as I like to do, something a little bit more substantial, a little less forgiving. Glue beading off. Certainly got plenty there. The hardness of the steel actually pushes the edges of the Tyvek down as well. So it obviously there is a very small edge to the Tyvek, which is white, and repeated pushing actually reduces that somewhat to the point where it's hardly visible, which is obviously a good thing. So okay, so we now just need to apply some glue to the front portion there to get that curve down. And once again, we need to make sure that we get a decent amount of glue in there so that we don't get any leakage. So now these little notches in the that create the tabs themselves, that's a potential area that water can come in. Those little, where the V comes down to the edge of the structure. So we just want to make sure we get a decent amount of glue in between. So front there, carry our glue down all the way. We should be able to peel this back a little, since it hasn't completely set yet. I don't normally advocate using a lot of glue, but this obviously helps with waterproofing, so it has to be used sensibly rather than sparingly. So, okay, let's pop that to one side and we'll let the glue set a little, and then we will push it home once that's done and go from there. Right, let's see whether we have contact. Seems to be going down well. So we'll just use the back edge of the knife again to push the material down firmly. The glue could probably use another few minutes to go off. But we can always come back to it. Keep all that glue squidging out, peel that off. Make sure the back of the knife is clean. That seems to have gone down really well. More glue squidging out, but that's coming off too. Excellent. Okay, there we have one complete float. Now all we've got to do is all of that again, but the other way around. Now, the last piece of the final last piece of the puzzle is mounting the undercarriage mount to the float itself. And as I said, you've got basically spikes there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop the tip of the blade in just to break the foam underneath slightly to accept that spike, and then that then positions our mount perfectly on the float itself. So the only thing we have to do is then glue this to the float, and once again the foam to foam is an ideal glue for the task. What you do want to avoid is getting glue in the channel that the carbon fibre is going to go through, so just be a little careful around that area, but otherwise make sure there's a decent amount glue. It's going to hold the mount onto the float. So go, push that down firmly, and there shouldn't be a gap between the float and the mount. It should sit tight against there. So what we can do once again, because the glue once set becomes a contact adhesive, then we can just press that firm once the glue has dried off slightly. Right, I'll go about creating the second float, and then we'll have a look at mounting the floats onto our fuselage. So here we have two complete floats. Now, before we put them onto the Scrappee, there's a little trick that I want to show you that helps waterproof. I've got a little bit of wax here. This is just a tea light candle that I picked up, and all I'm going to do is just lightly rub the candle and deposit a little bit of wax on all of the seams that'll be going into the drink, into the water, and just fill any gaps that happen to be there with the wax. Now, I'm not putting it on hot because the Tyvek does react to petroleum, it reacts to lighter fluid, and of course candles are could actually, with the melted wax, could actually cause an issue, and of course the heat as well. So I'm just putting it on and just using my finger to provide a little bit of heat to meld the wax into the various areas. So just wiping it over. Obviously I don't want to use too much because it adds weight, but just a little bit here and there, just to help with sealing the floats. The other thing that you can do is you can actually put a little bit onto the bottom of the float as well, which will reduce the surface tension on the water, so it won't be so sticky to get the aircraft off the water under power. So I'll do this one as well. Show you. It's just rub a little wax. You can use just a normal candle. This is just one I happen to have to hand. Just fills in any of the little gaps. You can spend a little more time than I am on it just to make sure it's all filled in, but it'll really help with keeping the water out. Go. There we go. Just a little on the bottom there. There we go. Fantastic. Great. Well, our two floats are created. Let's go get a Scrappee to put it on. So I've brought along my Scrappee Night Owl with the lights and the big wheels. What we're going to do first is just remove those wheels from the aircraft itself. Now, hopefully, I did attach them with a little bit of the foam to foam, I think, or Yoo-hoo, but it allows you to pull that off. So we've now removed the wheels. I can pop that back and put this in a safe place, so I can pop them back on once I feel I don't need to put it on water anymore. And literally just the slot that you got there slots into, or the undercarriage slots in like that, and the hole for the undercarriage itself, let's see if I can position this. Yeah, the hole in the original aircraft should line up with the hole in the attachment point. So the way we can do that now is, what we can do to attach is use our carbon fibre, and what I'm going to do before I insert it is just sand down one of the ends of it just slightly, just to make it easier to insert it through the various holes. So I should now be able to just pop that through that hole there, and that should then go all the way through. Turn it over. You can see there it's gone all the way through, and then I can pop my second float on into the slot, and then continue the carbon fibre through there, and with a small bit of effort, boom, we have our floats on. It's as easy as that. So there we go. That is how you pop the floats onto your Scrappee, and obviously completely the reverse to remove them. So just wind out your carbon fibre, and off they fall. So there we have it, the complete build of the Scrappee float upgrade. Thank you very much for watching.